Good evening, Razorback fans. I want to welcome you to the Wednesday edition of the Hog Talk podcast presented by the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson PLLC with offices in Springdale, Fort Smith, and Ozark. They are the oldest full-service law firm in the River Valley, as well as Bet Online, where it's the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports contests, events, and first-to-market online. Find reviews and news for every league. And BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information from live in-game betting, props, and futures. So head on over to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. And tonight with Thanksgiving right around the corner. Tomorrow we're doing a double duty show. We're going to do both of our shows in one night. So first I present you Adam Spencer of Saturday Down South covering the Missouri Tigers. We've had you on last year around the same time. So we all know what this game means. We all know the roller coaster ride for both teams really. I don't know the status of the Missouri Tigers, but I know Arkansas is kind of limping into this game. So just kind of give me a preview of Missouri's take on this, how they're heading into this game. I know they just got done. They just come off a win themselves. So just the vibe around Missouri, knowing they need this for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one. It adds the stakes to it. It was, that was a big win for the Hogs last week, but it takes a little bit of the pressure off of them this week, and they don't have to necessarily force some of those banged up guys that you're mentioning. They don't have to necessarily put KJ Jefferson in big time running spots where he's going to get crunched because Mizzou does have a good defense, and the defense is pretty healthy entering this game. They're everybody's bumps and bruises this time of year, but they're pretty healthy on that side of the ball. And on offense, Brady Cook is playing some of his best football these past couple of weeks. He's thrown, obviously the end of that Tennessee game got away from him a little bit there. But he still finished that game with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He had 2 touchdowns and no interceptions last week. He's run for 180 yards in those 2 games. So he's playing some of his best football now that Bush Hamden has taken over a few more of the play calling duties from Eli Drinkwitz. And so he's feeling confident entering this game. And so that'll give Mizzou a shot, if nothing else. And they've been outside of Kansas State and Tennessee, all of their losses have been 1 possession. So often brutal losses.
Well, yeah, you look at the Auburn game, the Georgia game. Georgia was the really surpriser where, everybody looks at Missouri and, being that the other than Vandy, the dweller. It's it seems like no matter what Missouri's done, it's kind of like Arkansas. No matter what they've done, they don't really get the respect that they deserve. And a lot of, and what we talked about before we started recording is, as much as Arkansas fans does not want to admit that this is a rivalry, it's hard to feel, from my perspective, that it is a rivalry. And the way I determine a rivalry is when you look at your schedule, which game do you want to win the most? And I think this is one of those games, no matter what the record is, no matter what's going on, and especially with Arkansas only, winning a handful of these, it's a game that Arkansas really wants to win. And from the Missouri side, where does Arkansas rank on the teams that they really want to, just beat?
Yeah, I mean, they're right there with, they're right there with the South Carolinas and Kentuckys. I would consider South Carolina and Kentucky as their 2 biggest rivals in the SEC East, just because those are the teams that, we're supposed to be on par with on a year-to-year basis. And Kentucky has just had our number recently, and they had an untimed down to win a few years ago, and then obviously this year they had the tackle box that extended halfway down to Fayetteville there. So they just lose brutally to Kentucky, so that has become a rivalry just because we're sick of them. And South Carolina, on the flip side, we've had their number more often than not, over our time in the SEC, especially here lately. Eli Drinkwitz has never lost to South Carolina. So, that's where I see the Arkansas rivalry is right there too. There was that 5-game winning streak that the Hogs snapped last year, and now, Sam Pittman has really turned the tables in this rivalry. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can string together, start a winning streak this year, or if Mizzou, with that extra carrot of bowl eligibility dangling in front of them, if they come out and play their best game. But I would consider it like right up there. It's one of those 3 games that Mizzou fans really, really want to win each year.
And, also, Eli being an Arkansas guy, there's all those ties.
Right.
And I think a lot of it on the Arkansas side was they made this trophy and they made it try to be a replacement rivalry when they took the LSU Arkansas game away from the day after Thanksgiving. And then, of course, with Missouri moving from, the Big 12 to the SEC, they didn't have that Missouri-Kansas, game anymore. So, but like I just said, it's the longer that this has went on, this is still one of those games, and it falling at the end of the year where, with Arkansas and their circumstances of how they're really needing this. I mean, they're projecting another Gator Bowl or a Gator Bowl if they beat Missouri, and I'm sure, with it's either win or go home for Missouri. So there's just a lot of caveats when it comes into this game, and I think no matter what, when you look at the schedule that Missouri has, coming off of that win, I know New Mexico State is not really, one of the elite programs in Division I, but, you lose 66-24 to Tennessee, so you come off of that win, and you can look at opponents, Ole Miss or New Mexico State, coming off of a loss and getting a win coming into this game is big no matter what team you're facing, especially with the way the season's going for both teams. So I guess moving on into the game, just knowing that KJ's back and showed what he's done, what's going to be the biggest keys that Missouri has to try and stop KJ and Rocket Sanders as well?
Yeah, that Mizzou defensive line is legit. They have Jaden Jernigan, who came over from Oklahoma State. They have Christian Williams, who came over from Oregon. Those guys have really clogged up the middle. Isaiah McGuire, he's one of the best edge guys that nobody knows about in the SEC. Trajan Jeffcoat, he's also, right in there. And then they have a lot of bodies that they can rotate along that front 4. And that's a real strength of this team this year. It's sort of back to the 2010s with the D-line U that, we had coming through there. We had, Michael Sam, Marcus Golden, Shane Ray, like Alden Smith, all these guys that, went on to bigger and better things in the NFL. They have that sort of depth and talent on this, like Trajan Jeffcoat, Isaiah McGuire, those guys are going to be playing on Sundays in a couple of years here, so the defensive line is definitely a strength, and that's what you need when you're going up against a guy like KJ Jefferson and a guy like Rocket Sanders. If they can hold steady at the point of attack, then Tyrone Hopper is really made a name for himself as a linebacker. They got him out of the portal too, and he's been impressive this year. He's really taken over the sort of like Nick Bolton role on the defense, and just really commands everything. They've got a versatile safety in Martez Manuel, who is really like an extra linebacker. So, that front 4 and then Manuel and Hopper, they're going to be the guys who are going to have to keep KJ Jefferson in the pocket. They're the guys that are going to have to, keep Rocket Sanders from getting to the second level. So, and they've been doing it this year. Last year they had an embarrassing run defense. They were, for a while there, they were, dead last in the FBS, and they finished with like the 4th worst Power 5 run defense last year. So, they're gonna, but that was a big area of emphasis for Drinkwitz in the portal this year, and he did a really good job rebuilding that defense from the front.
Yeah, and you look at that defense. I mean, other than, of course, the Tennessee game, I mean, they're not giving up that many points. I mean, see 26 points to Georgia, 24 to Florida in the loss, and then 21 to Kentucky. So it's almost like Arkansas, even though they're not giving up a lot of points, in the game, even the games that they're losing. And it's just on the Arkansas side of things, just injuries have really just timely injuries. We start the year off with Catalon going, so much anticipation with him coming back. He gets hurt right off the bat. And so then you're moving pieces around. So, when you're looking at Arkansas's defense and knowing that where they are and just, with the uncertainty of Bumper Pool at linebacker, and then having to bring in Chris Paul, to fill that gap, what are some promising things on the offensive side of ball that you think Missouri can use to attack that defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the secondary is definitely vulnerable. They've shown that at times this year. So as long as the weather is not terrible. I mean, I remember a couple years ago there was just monsoon, and that was the last game that was played in Columbia. I think it was a couple years back. So, that was, as long as that's not the case. I mean, like I said, Brady Cook's been playing some of his best ball. He's a dual threat guy. And, when you have Drew Sanders chasing you down, you need to be able to get away. So he does have that sort of escapability, but the offensive line is a veteran group. I mean, I'm not expecting them to necessarily hold up against Drew Sanders all game long, but, they should be able to give Cook enough time. And then it's like, when Cook can get the ball to the receivers, the Tigers have a really good group of receivers. Barrett Bannister is the one guy who might not go. He's a little banged up, but he's Mr. Reliable. He's a big chain mover on third down. But the talented guys, the explosive guys, are Luther Burden, obviously, Dominic Lovett, who's one of the more unknown receivers in the SEC, and then they also have Towski Dove, who he can make big plays. He can make catches in traffic. He can get loose down the sideline. So as long as they can give Cook a few seconds in the pocket, more often than not, like, he has the ability to find these guys deep. During the middle stretch of the season when they were losing all these close games, he was just making some terrible overthrows. That Florida swung on a pick six early. That's just at any level of football, one of the worst pick sixes I've ever seen thrown in my entire life. And it's just, and so he'll put the ball up for grabs one or two times a game. And the way that the season has gone on the teams that make those plays beat Missouri, and the ones who don't take advantage of Cook's mistakes end up, losing to the Tigers. So if that secondary can't get a timely turnover or two, then Mizzou's going to hang around and be right there with the chance to win it.
And on the aspect of this game meaning a lot on the Missouri side of, if they win, they're bowl eligible. And for those who, might not know the insides of the Missouri program, just what would it mean for this team this year, what you've seen on and off the field, you covering the team, what would it mean for this team, especially with the college football playoff and the opt-outs and everything that's been happening? What would it mean for the team to win this game and become bowl eligible?
Well, the big thing that it would do is so Drinkwitz brought in the best recruiting class in Missouri history this past year. So a lot of these freshmen, it's not just Luther Burden. There's some key freshmen on this team. And when you qualify for a bowl game, you get those extra 2.5 weeks of practices, and that's huge. And that practice period coincides. The transfer portal opens up on December 5th again. So there's going to be a lot of guys making decisions, and you want those guys to have to weigh, like, well, we've got bowl practice coming up. You don't want them sitting around already planning out their next season for a week and then the portal opens, and then maybe, I know that there are a lot of people that are going to be, Luther Burden chose Missouri over Alabama, Georgia. So, my advice to him would be, well, those are two programs that are going to have new quarterbacks next year. So, you might want to wait and see about that. But yeah, if you make it to the bowl game, not only do that's just so important for the freshmen, because a lot of teams, they'll, if guys opt out, the older guys opt out, if a lot of these guys that are starters are banged up, that first week of bowl practice is basically just letting the older players get healthy while the young guys get all the reps in practice. So so getting those extra weeks of bowl practice is just invaluable in that way, and just getting those guys up to speed so they can hit the ground running next year in the spring and stuff. It's just like, it's a early spring practice, really.
And on top of that, with him bringing in the best recruiting class at Missouri, what has the transfer portal done? And then I know there's been talks, where he's talked about the NIL stuff and how has that kind of affected or what kind of, market tools do y'all have to get some of these players some NIL or what difficulties have you faced in trying to get some of these players?
Yeah, I think that Mizzou has, a good position for the NIL stuff. Like as much as people in the SEC like to say, well, Mizzou doesn't belong in the SEC. It's like, well, the SEC likes the Kansas City and the St. Louis TV markets, and so there's money in Missouri, and if they can keep some of these guys home, there's opportunities for them in St. Louis. There's opportunities for them in Kansas City. Columbia has some good brands they're willing to work with players. The kicker, Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker, he has his own burger at a place in Columbia, and so there's opportunities there. Are they going to be able to compete with like the Texas A&Ms of the world, the Alabamas of the world? No, they're not. But like they can hold their own in that regard, and so the portal is going to continue to be important, and something that's going to be interesting this offseason is what Drinkwitz decides to do at the quarterback position, because this past year, I mean, they really wanted to get JT Daniels. They really wanted to get Jaden Daniels. They really wanted to get Jerry Bohannon. I think they even made a run at like Emory Jones, and they didn't get any of those guys. And so, I wonder how many, that Florida game, for example, that the terrible pick six that Brady Cook threw, well, he wouldn't have been in that game maybe. And so, it's missing out on a quarterback in the portal was perhaps the biggest fault with this team coming into the year. And it'll be interesting to see if they stick with Brady Cook or if they bring in some competition for him in the portal.
And a team like Missouri, who's been to the SEC championship game, out of the East, and you talked about that transfer portal. We've seen what Hooker's done. We've seen what Daniels have done. We've seen, Joe Burrow. And what would a quarterback on that caliber? I mean, just when you look at Missouri as a whole, just how close they are to, instead of being 5-6, maybe being 7-5 or 8-4, what would a quarterback do for a program like Missouri?
Yeah, it would, so the only two games that the Tigers have not been within one possession of winning were the Tennessee game, which they were only down 27-24 with like halfway through the third quarter. And then the wheels fell off there. But, and then the game, that was a blowout loss too. So, I mean, really, like this team could be going for, I mean, you can't expect to win every one score game, but like if they won somehow all one score games, they could be going for 10-2 right now. And if they had an elite quarterback, I think that they would be in that 8 or 9 win mix right now. And so like, that's the selling point. Like if you watch these Mizzou games, they just have such a hard time getting the ball to Luther Burden down the field. Like all these plays they just throw a quick screen to him. They get it to him on one of these like pitch plays. They let him take a direct snap and he just works his magic. But like if he could actually run a route and get the ball delivered to him by a competent quarterback, like he could be putting up Dorial Green Beckham type numbers when he like just dominated the SEC as a sophomore during one of those SEC East championship seasons. So, that was they just need a quarterback, and that's really Brady Cook has played well the past 2 weeks. He really has, but it was a 40-point loss to Tennessee and a win over New Mexico State. Nobody's writing home about that. So it'll be interesting. I think a quarterback, there's some rumors that like a guy like Tyler Van Dyke from Miami would be looking to transfer after his horrible year this year. Who knows? Who knows who's going to be on the market? Drake May is getting already pinned in as Ohio State's next starting quarterback. So we don't even know who, like any quarterback could end up in the portal. And if Mizzou gets a good one next year, and these wide receivers stay, then the offense should be in a good spot.
And we've talked about the players and stuff, and we kind of talked about Eli and his Arkansas ties, but look, coach speak aside, how much does Eli want to win this game? I mean, from what what you've been around, just how bad does he want to win this game, and how much does he kind of pay attention to Arkansas social media and what they say about, him being from Arkansas, but just how Missouri's perceiving Arkansas and vice versa, how Arkansas perceives Missouri.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one that he would want to win really bad. I think if you gave him truth serum, he would say this is, now that Dan Mullen is gone from Florida, I think he would maybe circle this one as the one that he wants to win most. And frankly, like now he has the extra, because with this amount of talent on the team and this amount of close calls that they've had this year, not making a bowl game will be seen as nothing less than a failure, and I think that might lead to some changes. If he loses, he's not going to get fired or anything, but they might force him to give up play calling duties like from the administration. So that's what I would do if he missed a bowl game. Like that's got to be the expectation at Mizzou is you have to win 6 games and go to a bowl game. It's not going to be a good one if you're Missouri and win only 6 games because, we're pretty far down the SEC pecking order, but you got to get to the bowl game. And so like that adds the motivation for sure. And everybody wants, if you're the coach at your home state school, you want to beat your home state school. And that's what he has an opportunity to do this weekend.
Yeah. And other than, Arkansas's game, you're coming into Ole Miss game, up in the air, you're just coming down to Ole Miss or, Missouri, Arkansas being able. So, just last week we were in the same position of,
right.
Hey, we got to win one of these games to become bowl eligible. And you do not want it to come down to, I think it would just raise the stakes even more. Say Arkansas lost to Ole Miss and now both teams are coming into this same record. I just think it would raise the stakes of the winner of this. It's win or go home kind of deal. But if you was to see the keys of the game, prediction wise, what you're looking forward to and, how Missouri's played all year, it's at home. You got the 2:30 CBS game. You got that national exposure Friday after Thanksgiving. So I don't know what the TV schedule is like nationwide, but usually it's pretty bleak when it comes to the amount of games on Friday. But what do you see this game, how it turns out and Missouri is to win, what would be the biggest key to a Missouri victory?
Yeah, well, I think that this one might be played in a little bit of obscurity just because for the first half, at least, the second half of USA England will be on in the World.
Yeah.
So, there might be a lot of eyes on that one. But yeah, so the biggest key, I think, so offensively, it's for Brady Cook to continue putting up those zeros in the interception column. That's the big key. You can't, this Arkansas secondary is vulnerable. You gotta keep the ball moving down the field. You can't give it away to them. The second key, is I think if they hold Rocket under 100 yards, they're gonna be in a position at the end to win it. And they just got to avoid they just can't go full Mizzou. Like there's, fumbling out the back of the end zone as you're running in to win in overtime. This bizarre tackle box that extended halfway to the moon to lose to Kentucky, just giving up 41 points or whatever it was in the last 20 minutes of the Tennessee game, just completely falling apart and failing to score in half of the Georgia game. You just got to, there's all these Mizzou mistakes that just they're shooting themselves so much in the foot that, I don't know how many toes they have left. I think they've shot most of them on point. So, if they can avoid those mistakes, the run defense can prevent a breakout from Rocket Sanders. And if Brady Cook just doesn't throw any costly interceptions, that's a good recipe for success, and they'll be right there to win the game.
Yeah, and the guy at Arkansas social media, Pinto, he come up with the phrase "hog's gonna hog," and that went, that's Arkansas athletics wise, and it's not always been a positive. So it's crazy how similar the programs are. Missouri just coming in, a few years, well, what's it been 10 years since they've joined has it been 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Since so they've been in the league 10 years now. It's crazy that it even seems that long, but yeah, this just developed in one of the marquee games, the trophy aside, what it means to, and I think if they keep on being a competitive game, it's just going to keep on getting bigger and bigger. But I really thank you for your time. I mean, I know this time of year, Thanksgiving tomorrow. So I really want to appreciate you for coming on the day before Thanksgiving and hopefully everything, goes out with the game other than, a Missouri win, of course. But any other week, we'll be rooting for you.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir. Well, that was Adam Spencer of Saturday Down South previewing the Missouri game. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break and we're going to set things up. We will bring in Sydney Fields of FQ Arkansas, Fifth Quarter Arkansas, and also the co-host of Running Through the A podcast. So we'll be right back. Is your mic unmuted?
It is now.
There we go. All right, quick turnaround this holiday week, and we'll go to the weekly women's sports report where we'll bring in Sydney Fields of FQ Arkansas. If you say it real fast, it kind of says something a little funny, but and also Running Through the A podcast. So Sydney, thank you for coming on tonight, talking some women's sports. Both I think share the same passion when it comes to the Arkansas women's sports, and really glad that, more people are becoming involved in this, because 4 years ago, it wasn't, you really couldn't say that. So I love to see the coverage that the women are getting. And again, I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, of course. I'm excited.
And I have to throw the scarf on. I forgot during the transition. So
there we go. I'm repping a softball championship shirt today. So,
talking soccer right off the bat, I mean, big game against Florida State. I had the chance to talk with Coach Hale earlier and just about the magnitude of this game. He's always been so close, whether it's an SEC tournament win or he's gotten to the Elite Eight, never made it to the College Cup. And so, watching this team this year, it's just, when they didn't win as many games in the regular season, then they lose in the first round of the SEC tournament. It's like, what's going on? But I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise of, you didn't have to play those extra games, and now here we are, you're fresher than other teams coming into the national tournament.
Right, and we got to have those games at home, which were so important because we don't lose at home.
Yeah,
those were huge for sure. But this weekend's going to be hard. Playing Florida State's going to be tough. They're the reigning national champion. So it's going to be tough, but we've been outscoring NCAA tournament opponents 14-5. I think the girls got it.
Yeah. And then, Jessica, I mean, De Filippo, 6 goals in the postseason. And that was a question I'd asked Coach Hale was, with all the pressure that goes on Anna and all the attention she draws, what does it mean to have somebody like Jess come in and he said, well, there was a time where Ava Takersley was leading the nation in goals. So, I mean, they have a deep threat, and you drop one, you can plug the other one in. So it's going to be awesome to see how they respond. And, losing that game and what even got me thinking about that was going into the SEC tournament. He even said, this soccer is not a game where you're supposed to win 3 games in 3 days. So that kind of just got my head spinning of when they lost out in the first round. It was like, okay, I know they didn't take a dive, but it's like, okay, they can use that to their advantage. And it's really proven, because you look at the other teams in the SEC, Bama's the only one still standing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bama did really well in the tournament as well, but I think we really needed to just get back at home, settle down, and do what we do. And Jess, you're right, Jess has been awesome in the postseason. B's been really great too. Grace Barber has been incredible. I'm so glad we have her. She's been such a huge addition to this team.
And I asked Coach Hale, we've seen how the penalty kicks went against Vandy, and just that mental game and just what could be going through her head and how she played it just right. It's like you could tell she was a seasoned goalie because it's like she almost knew where the goal kicker, the girl was going with the kick. And I had to leave. I was there for the first part of the game and living an hour away. I had to come back, but I mean, you missed the most important part of the game and how it was back and forth and back and forth. And, you thought, I mean, they went up 2-0. I was like, okay, man, this is good. Halftime, I'll head back. And then it was 2-2. And so that back and forth, it just really battle test this team. But yeah, going to Tallahassee and playing on Saturday, I just wonder, your aspect of it, how hard it must be to, one, you're playing for a chance to go to the College Cup, but you're doing this right after a holiday and right after a major holiday and Thanksgiving. And how, if they're not able to get to really have time with their family, what does that play into the mental aspect of preparing yourself for this game?
I mean, also not only after all that, but after a very physical game against Memphis Sunday night. I mean, they were tired, and it was a brutal game the whole time. But yeah, the mental of, not really getting that time. I don't really know what their like travel schedule is looking like since they're playing Saturday at 4, but you're not really having that time that you might be used to, not being this far in the postseason. But I think they're like strictly business right now. I'm sure Colby has it down perfectly on how they're going to go down there and execute. So I'm sure it's very tough, but I'm sure they'll get the job done.
Yeah, and the style he coaches, watching some of his practices and stuff. I'm 40, so it made me. He has an old school approach to him that, just being able to watch how he connects with the players and how they respond to him. It just makes you want to run through a brick wall for him because, I mean, he is very direct. But they, talk about respect him. Each one of them looks him in the eyes. They respect what he's doing. So, but he don't beat around the bush. When he's recruiting these girls, he's like, look, you're here to play against the best in the world. If you're not prepared for that, then you can go to another school. So, I mean, it's not like he's sugarcoating things. And so we'll see how things play out. Hopefully things really pan out and they make the College Cup. I hadn't seen the schedule or who they will end up playing. I really want to say it's Alabama if they end up going to the College Cup. So I don't know if that's how. I think that's what they fall on the top side, or if they go off the left side. I'd have to look and see who they'll end up facing. But
yeah, I haven't looked that far into it either. I'm excited for this game. I think it'll be a really good game.
Yeah, and it says it's going to be on ESPN Plus, which it baffles me that a game of this magnitude,
it's insanity,
gets put on the back burner. But, doing this is my 4th year covering the team, and it's like it's surprising, but it's not surprising.
Right.
Just the fact that you've got to, and I know how it goes into marketing and all this stuff, but it's crazy that they have ESPN Plus and all this, but yet you've got a SEC alternate channel, or you've got ESPN alternate channel. You can find a way to put these things on regular TV, and they choose not to. And it's almost like I was talking to, I was having a conversation with Jordan Black. And I was like, women in sports and women anchors, I mean, we've come a long ways, but yet we still have a long ways to go. And to me, that's part of it, just seeing how far we've yet to go. And I'm pulling up the schedule right now. Yeah, it's going to be on ESPN Plus. So it's just at 4:00. So it's just crazy that you'll watch a D3 football game on Saturday, but you got to go to Florida State.
Yeah, there are so many options too. Like the same thing happened with like regionals and super regionals in softball. They were near impossible to find. So it's not surprising, but maybe one day we'll get there.
Yeah, and moving on to softball, I mean, another sport we kind of got to, go to some of the scrimmages and stuff, and just the job that Coach Deifel is doing with the softball program, building it from the ground up pretty much. And you have the foundations that was set with Gibby, Lenny, Braxton Burnside the year she was here, Hannah McEwen, and now you're into that second tier of your program of you've built this foundation, you've built this program. Now what's next? And I think we're at that level.
Yeah.
And seeing some of these freshmen and knowing what they got coming in next year has me very, very excited for the future of the softball program. When you can rattle off 4 of the top 30 players in the country, and you're even dipping into 25, 26, and 27 and getting the top players in those classes. I mean, it's only going up for Coach Deifel.
When these freshmen are like upperclassmen, when they're juniors and seniors, it's going to be insane because the talent that's coming in is insane in itself. And then you have this class, this freshman class that is insane. They were the #1 recruited class in the country. It's mind-blowing what we're going to be able to watch in Bogle Park the next couple of years. And this year is going to be great too. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and then there's talks of, Gamble moving from third to catcher, and that's crazy. And then that's one of the things that you got your top returning star coming back on the defensive side, not pitching, but defensive side of the ball. And she's going to be moving positions, and it almost puts you in a better position to where you might finish than if she stayed at third. And there's options where you can go at third base, but I think it's very imperative when you have the pitching staff that you have. Yes, you have Shanice back and Callie, but you've really only been able to hang your hat on Shanice. So having that veteran catcher, it's almost like a point guard behind the plate to really help calm things down, I think is a very smart move by Coach and getting this team to really gel together.
Having Hannah move to catcher in that leadership position, there's nobody better to be there. I mean, she's got the fire, she's got the passion, she's got the energy to cheer anybody on that's in the circle. And I think she's going to do incredible there. I think she's going to be great. And I think all of our pitchers are going to succeed more because of it.
Yeah. And also the fact that you put her back there and she is one of those, she wants to do whatever's best for the team. She's a yes, ma'am type of person. And not only with Coach Deifel and the roster, but the staff, Coach Matt, Coach Yo, just this family true atmosphere. I was over at the practice the other day and, they're having to work with one of the pitchers on their strides and just the shortening it up, coming in as a freshman, you're just kind of, really getting them keyed on little technical things. And I think their last practice was yesterday and they get to pick it back up the 9th. But, you only get so many practices throughout the year. And of course, cold weather, you really don't want to be outside to begin with. But the biggest thing I'm interested in seeing is you're going to see more bunts. You're going to see more stolen bases and the outfield speed. Just seeing some of the routine catches that would have been diving catches last year. What gets me excited is you're losing a lot. You're losing Gibby, Lenny, KB, Hannah, but you are gaining legit plug and play players. And that's what happens when you're recruiting at that elite level.
Yeah, we lost a lot of power, but we still have power on the team. We gained a ton of speed and even everything you just listed and slapping. We have some really good young slap hitters and those girls are quick. We have a lot of quick freshmen. We have a couple quick older girls, but I've never seen as much speed, on a Razorback team like we have now. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more small ball, but it's going to be quick pace softball.
And the best thing about it is you're not going to have film on them. The ones that we're talking about with Reagan Johnson and Natalia Rios and the girl Halverson from South Dakota. I mean, watching them throw down the bunts and the slaps and just they're at first base before you even know it. They're the ones getting, but they're also getting to go against Shanice and Callie and, Kamenzind and the girl from Colorado. I keep on forgetting her, Nikki McGaffin. You're getting to go. So it's like ironing, sharpening iron because Shanice was pitching and Priggy took one over and hit it pretty far. And you could see it was bothering her. But it was the practice right before Thanksgiving break. So, I mean, you're trying to really focus, but seeing, yes, they're losing power, but I've been to some practices and some scrimmages and they, if Kiki really gets settled in and she can get to where she is stroking the ball. And, the biggest Achilles heel for the past couple of years was that, the off-speed pitch. If they could get to where they can time those balls and really, they're gonna hit them into Fayetteville High School. I mean, they're gonna hit that many out. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they're really good. It's whenever we were there for some of the fall series, and those were so much fun to watch. And I ended up the next weekend, I was like, I got to go back. I mean, it was addicting to watch. It was so much fun.
Now, going on to the women's basketball side of things, and I know with you living in Little Rock, it's kind of hard to, but, they went to Pine Bluff and played, and we had the Coach Thornton from Pine Bluff on, and didn't really even realize the magnitude of that game until after the game was over with, and Miriam Dowda, what it meant for them to go play at the HBCU. They got to go on a tour of the facilities, and Coach Thornton said after the game that the Arkansas players didn't even get to shower after the game because of the facilities. They don't have the showering, that the D1 facility has. So I think it gave them kind of a humble way of, hey, this is what it could be like. If whenever you're thinking that, I really don't want to be at Arkansas, or I might not be at a D1 place, well, go down the road and you'll see how they live on a day-to-day basis. And then just Arkansas being the flagship program and not afraid to go into their houses, not afraid to snub their, they're not snubbing their noses at other schools and saying, no, they're going. And Coach Neighbors, being an Arkansas guy, made it a point to say, hey, look, not only will we play you, but we're going to go to your house and play you. And I think it's done nothing but, even for the kids who don't go to Arkansas, it's done so much, just like with Coach Deifel in softball. And you see so many young girls in the berm at Bogle. You're seeing so many young girls in the stands at Bud Walton Arena, and of course, at Little Rock and UCA. It's doing nothing but bring up awareness for kids all over the, in soccer. Kids all over the state are playing more games now and getting more exposure.
Yeah, I think it's a huge nod to Coach Neighbors that he is going into these places like UALR, UAPB. And I think it's huge for their communities, like the Pine Bluff community and the community here in Little Rock, to be able to go and see our girls play and take their own little girls and, get kids out there and grow the game of women's basketball in areas that you might not have a ton of people at the games. And it's awesome to see, the University of Arkansas being in these places. And a lot of people don't like, it weakens our schedule and all that stuff. But I think it is a really big thing. And it shows how much Coach Neighbors, supports the girls and supports everyone in the state, honestly.
It being from Central Arkansas, there's something we don't even think to touch on. What is the vibe in Central Arkansas of the women's sports? What is the vibe with the basketball program, the softball program, and especially the thing we didn't even touch on, Arkansas softball going to UCA and how big those games have been in playing in UCA. What's been what you've noticed the most of the growth of women's sports in Central Arkansas, the University of Arkansas?
Yeah, I mean, people don't go to UALR women's basketball games often. People don't go to UCA women's basketball games often. I think the UCA softball program is growing. UALR doesn't have a softball program here. So whenever Arkansas comes to town, it is really fun to go to UCA and watch that game, or go to UALR and watch the girls, or travel to Pine Bluff and watch the girls. But like high school wise, women's sports are huge here. But then in the colleges around here, they're not that big. So getting to see the university come here for all different sports is really big for, everybody.
And just, you being able to be a part of it and you growing in your coverage and what y'all have done with FU Arkansas, how addicting has it been? I mean, I know, like I said, fourth year doing this, it didn't take long, especially with the women's basketball team when they had, Chelsea Dungy and Amber Ramirez. And so it doesn't take long to where you really have to say, look, I'm media, I cover this team, but man, it's so hard with the coaches and Coach Neighbors, Coach Deifel. It's hard not to become part of their family and take the media hat off and not become a fan?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a fan of these guys literally since I was born, but I started, doing the media stuff and writing and stuff back in January, and getting to get closer to the programs in that sense, and doing the podcast and writing and all that stuff. It's been so much fun, and it might even be more fun than just being a fan. But getting closer to those programs and getting to watch like the growth, the recruiting, like it's been so fun the past year.
And just what were how hard has it been really to try to get the access and get into where you're covering the teams? I know you and Will there have really done an amazing job on y'all's side. And, what have y'all faced any kind of adversity of trying to, get more coverage and really get your feet on the ground when it comes to covering those sports?
With the women's sports, no, not really at all. We have incredible SIDs. Our media people at the university are really incredible and easy to work with, and they want you to cover this stuff. They want you to be involved, and they want the sport to grow. They just want everyone to know what's going on, and everyone should know what's going on. The University of Arkansas is fun right now, all across the board.
Yeah, and you talked about the SIDs. I mean, they do not get near enough credit for the jobs they do, because you talk to, Grace or Emily, Kylie, Grace last year, she was thrown into the softball department after they got back from Mexico. And then you're just going right into full-blown season. Yeah. And how she picked everything up and how she just come in and just done an amazing job. And I don't know. I mean, it's like she was meant for that. And for those people to be a part of the basketball programs, the men's basketball and the football programs, but still have time to let us be involved in the sports and get to go to the games. And it's been nothing but a blast to be able to cover these games, especially when they're so close for getting to go to the College World Series. I mean, I was in Michigan when they had played Texas, and I was just praying that they would beat Texas. I wanted to go to Oklahoma City so bad, and I'd made travel plans to go, but you could see the emotion of Coach Deifel after that. I think that was one of the most heartbreaking press conferences I've ever seen. Just her emotion after that loss.
Yeah. That was a bad time.
Yeah.
And people love to talk about, how awesome like our social media teams are. A lot of this, at least on the women's side, these are coming from, Emily, Grace, Fuller, Kylie. A lot of them are coming from the SIDs, and they don't get enough credit for that because they really do the best job.
Oh yeah. And they're just, most of them you text, hey, I want to interview this player, this coach. And, just for them to be like, anything you want to do, we pretty much have the access to do it, because they do want the attention and they do want the notoriety. And like you said, they do deserve it. And moving into what y'all have done, at FQ Arkansas and then starting up your own podcast, I know y'all take a different kind of angle of your podcast, but I noticed that you had Danielle Musselman on, and we'd had her on a couple years ago to talk about what we talk about right now. And there was times where I was wanting to get this thing rolling a couple years ago with a roundtable, kind of with Tara Talmadge and Alyssa Orange and me, but logistics could just never made it. But what was your conversation like with Danielle and just the type of person she is?
Oh, Danielle she is a very incredible woman. I was really, really interested in talking to her because her role before becoming Coach Musselman's wife, her role as an ESPN analyst, as a sports reporter across Fox, NFL, all these things. She really had an incredible career in sports media, and at a time that you didn't see a lot of women in sports media. And so she was one of those like people that someone like me or someone else would look up to be a woman in sports media. And she's just incredible. The charity work she does, the philanthropy work she does, and then, kind of co-running a basketball team and family through all of it. She's really awesome. And she talked about how much, they all support each other. All the coaches, all the wives, they're all super close and supportive. And like she said, she loves going to the gymnastics meets, all sorts of different stuff. And they're just big sports fans. They support the women, as much as anybody else who's a big fan would. But she was really incredible, and she deserves so much respect.
And that's another advantage Arkansas has. Coach Neighbor said when he was at Washington that, there was so many coaches that were jealous. They didn't want the women's programs or any other program doing well or succeed in what we have here with Hunter Yurchek all the way down. I told this story. I don't know if I told you, but it was the fact that you had the LSU baseball series going on, and he was at the Arkansas-Kentucky softball series and stayed the whole game, all three. And that's when it was like, to me, like he gets it. Like he sold me on like really, truly, it wasn't a inning or two and, showing face. He sat there in the stands the whole time, wasn't in his box, and just sat there. And then, of course, Coach Pittman and letting the recruits and these people come in, these commits come to the football field, and what that has to mean, that the inclusion. I think that's the biggest thing, and all the players that I've talked to is they just want to be felt like they're included with everybody else. And I think Arkansas has really done a great job with that aspect of it.
Yeah, every player that Will and I have talked to, basketball, football, obviously, but soccer, volleyball, softball, they have all said the same thing. Well, Nija said that she had seen Hunter in the stands at practices. Like, he'll show up to practices sometimes, but soccer and volleyball girls said that he is the first one that you see after a loss and the first one you see after a win. It doesn't matter. He's holding the locker room door. He's congratulating you, whatever. He's there. And you don't see that anywhere else. And to me, it's crazy that every single person we've talked to has said the exact same thing. And I think we have, like, overall the best athletic department when it comes to head coaches, assistant coaches, athletic directors, media people. It doesn't matter. I think we have one of the very best in the country.
And coming from a female, perspective of that, what do you think that means? Like, they truly not just one time see this, it's a consistency of how much it means to them.
It means a lot. Even just like playing in high school, no shade, but my athletic director came to like 2 softball games out of 4 years that I was there. So having someone that is so busy as a D1 SEC athletic director be at your stuff and be there supporting, I'm sure that means the world.
We were talking to Jill Gillen, and she was on a board where athletes get together and they're a part of a group, make suggestions and stuff. And she was talking about how hard it was to get from, Barnhill to after practice to where they eat and the facilities and stuff. And just making a suggestion, hey, is there any way we can just have have them stay open 30 minutes later so we can have enough time after practice? She said that meeting was on a Friday, and that Monday they stayed open an hour later, and they continue to do so. So, I mean, the gymnastics, where Barnhill's at compared, at the university, you're walking up and down mountains, it's not
literally,
it's not an easy walk. And, it's just crazy that not only did they say that they would do it, but the promptness of they really hear us. And I think that speaks volumes of what really goes on and what you don't see unless we tell their stories.
Right.
And that's what really has driven me, is not only keep up with the scores and tell you what's going on with, all the sports, but to be able to tell the stories that really mean something to them and these coaches. That Coach Watson, the volleyball team, every time we have a press conference, that's the first thing he does is thank everybody for even taking the time to be in his press conference. And he told me in an interview, he's seen Hunter Yurchek at a volleyball match, or it was him or Pittman. He's like, what are you doing here? Like, he's like, you've got other places you could go. Why are you here? And it's just like, it takes them a little bit to get used to, because even with the coaches, they're not used to it.
Mm-hmm. You don't see that respect everywhere. And it's really cool that we have it here.
So I guess what we'll do is we'll finish it up. I'll plug. I mean, what you got going. I know if I seen it right, you're taking some time off from the podcast for a little bit so you can heal that shoulder up. Tell us what you got going on and what we can look forward to. What's going on at fifth quarter or fourth quarter Arkansas, and what you got going on with running through the A.
Yeah, we took like a week and a half off, and then Will and I happened to be in Fayetteville at the same time. So we wanted to get one in person, and we were very lucky and grateful that Danielle was down to do it. So we did that one, posted that one last week, and then this week, the holidays are crazy. Will's been traveling. We both got sick after being in Fayetteville. I'm still dealing with this shoulder. So hopefully we'll be back next week and have someone good for you. But we're doing that. What we're doing over there is so much fun. If you don't know, we mostly interview players of any of the sports. It doesn't matter. And kind of let them build their brand. We get to talk about them as a person and not just the sport that they play. And so you get to learn more about them and expose what they do. So that's super fun. And we also go into, coaches and really anyone that's been a part of Razorback Athletics. And it's been a lot of fun doing that. I'm excited to keep doing it and dive in, hopefully to some women's basketball and some other big stuff coming.
Well, the women's basketball is definitely fun to watch. I mean, and they're good. They're loaded. Softball and women's basketball is like my two key components when it comes to, but then you get to go into the soccer and what I've been able to follow, and you get attached to Coach Hale and greatness all around. But no, I mean, the women's basketball team, and I do hold Coach Neighbors to a different kind of standard because he's the one that gave me my shot. He's the one that really let me in to start covering his team and media credentials and getting my foot in the door with, SEC tournament being in Greenville, which that's right down the road from my family. So, being able to be right down the road from my family and have an excuse to go on vacation and see them. And it was really when everything took off with Chelsea. But so I hold him to that because I really have a lot to be thankful for because that's where all this started was with Coach Neighbors. But, Coach Deifel's, up there too, Coach Watson, Coach Weber. It's just, there's not a coach that I have not interacted with that you don't have anything but wonderful things to say. But from y'all's aspect, I enjoy what y'all do with you, paying attention to the women's sports. We need it. I know there's a lot of competition when it comes to other people in sports, but for me, I embrace it. I want more people to come in and be here doing what we do because they enjoy it and we're all doing the same thing. We all share the same passion.
Yeah. And when you get close to these people and, talking to these people and learning about these people, it makes it so much more fun to watch. Like, soccer, we had Grace Barber and B. Franklin on, and now every time I'm like looking for them and cheering them on hard. And same with volleyball. I got so into volleyball this season with, Taylor and Hannah Hogue on. It makes you just want to sit down and watch every single thing that they do. It's awesome.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I hope you and your family have a wonderful Thanksgiving. But for our fans, we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, safe travels. Again, we'll come back on Sunday with our normal show, hopefully previewing a Missouri win. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Weekly Women's Sports Report, along with the double feature of the weekend preview show of the Missouri game. And we will catch you on Sunday.